Thank you, Speaker. I'll be sharing my time with the member from Nanaimo, Ladysmith. Mr. Speaker, would you like to come visit the intersection of Shepherd and Bathurst on a Sunday afternoon in North York? Every Sunday, a group of thugs, most of them covering their faces, show up at Shepherd and Bathurst in my North York riding. They chant Intifada, a violent resistance in a protest to a peaceful rally inside of one of Canada's most Jewish communities. Sometimes they have a guy dressed and role-playing as Sinwar, the mastermind of October 7. October 7 wasn't just one of the worst terrorist attacks in modern history. It sparked global jihad, including here in Canada. For Canada's Jews, this is a sobering moment. My friends, my neighbors, members of my synagogue, fellow Canadians are scared. Hate crimes against Jewish Canadians have more than quadrupled since the Liberals took office. But never mind the statistics. 2 weeks ago, a woman was stabbed for shopping in a kosher section of an Ottawa grocery store. A father wearing kippah was beat up in front of his children in a Montreal park. The Hayamushka School for Girls, a kilometer away from where I live, was shot at 3 times. And you know what Bill C-9 does to address that? Nothing. Worse than nothing. If passed in its current form, this Liberal hate bill may be weaponized against every Canadian. I don't want to hear any lectures from these Liberals about anti-Semitism. I dealt with Soviet anti-Semitism, and I lived in Israel during the first Intifada. I remember the suicide bombings of restaurants, hotels, markets, and buses. Deadly mayhem everywhere perpetuated by the Islamic Jihad. And now, what do Canada's Jews get from this Liberal government? Canada's recognition of a terrorist state on the eve of Rosh Hashanah, on the Jewish New Year, without preconditions. Don't they dare lecture me about anti-Jew hate. They got thanked by Hamas, not once, not twice, but 3 times. There are enough laws on the books to stop this mayhem. It's already illegal to intimidate someone while physically blocking them from entering a facility. Hatred has been defined by the Supreme Court for 35 years. We've settled on it. But as we'll see in a moment, this legislation will water down that definition. To willfully promote terror is to willfully promote hate. But despite the good work of our police heroes, municipal, provincial, and the federal governments are refusing to protect Canada's Jewish community. So what do the Liberals propose instead? They come up with Bill C-9 that should concern every member of the Jewish community and every Canadian. The bill will repeal requirement of the Attorney General's consent to lay hate charges. Now that may indeed simplify the process and reduce fingerprinting, such as we have now in Ontario, between the Attorney General's office and police. But the proposed repeal would also apply to private prosecutions. So vexatious informants will try to lay hate charges against political opponents every day, including against some members of this House, conceivably. It will create a chill on free speech. Now, the Crown may intervene to stay or withdraw such charges, but the Crown may also not take a position. And even if the Crown withdraws or stays the charges, the informant might be able to appeal that by taking it to judicial review. Such persecutions will cause distress to the alleged accused. They will result in legal fees, reputational risks, and travel restrictions. The bill must be amended so that the Attorney General's consent is required for hate crime prosecutions started by private information. What the Liberals propose is very dangerous, and I'm rightfully scared that politicians and ideological opponents will try to silence each other using criminal proceedings. Another major concern is that the new standalone hate offense applies to any offense under any act of Parliament. So an offense under the Elections Act or under the Canada Labour Code may attract criminal prosecution. There's significant risk of overreach, particularly in view of previous concerns regarding private prosecutions. I got into politics by counting votes and studying elections law. What if someday someone accuses a scrutineer of suppressing votes because hate? Then could they be subjected to a criminal prosecution, including a private prosecution? Or someone withheld wages contrary to the Canada Labour Code, should that give rise to a criminal prosecution if hate is alleged? We're talking about tacking on a criminal offense onto non-criminal conduct. It's scary, and it's not necessary. And finally, the government is seeking to dilute the definition of hatred as articulated by the Supreme Court of Canada. I don't understand why they're looking to lower the threshold for hate speech after 35 years of good common law. In Kikstra, the leading case on the definition of hatred, the Supreme Court defined hatred as connotes emotion of an intense and extreme nature that is clearly associated with vilification and detestation. In the subsequent case in Watcott, the Supreme Court said that hatred is limited to the extreme manifestations of the words detestation and vilification. But Bill C-9 defines hatred as, quote, the emotion that involves detestation or vilification and that is stronger than disdain or dislike, close quote. The codification of hatred in Bill C-9 omits the words connotes emotion of intense and extreme nature. It also omits the other alternative, the Watcott alternative, extreme manifestations. Why? The effect is to lower the threshold for the definition of hatred, making it easier to convict of hate speech. This is another attack on free speech by the Liberals. It will not protect Jews or anyone, but it will place every Canadian at a greater risk of criminal prosecution. This bill lowers the threshold for hate speech. It couples criminal prosecutions with non-criminal proceedings, and it allows private citizens to swear private hate informations and lay hate charges without consent of the Attorney General. In its present form, Speaker, this bill is an assault on free speech. And like I said, I'm a Canadian Jew. I would like the Liberals to insist on enforcement of existing laws and not be thanked by Hamas every other month. But they should go back and rethink this bill. Don't make innocent Canadians fear of being in legal jeopardy. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. Then a member for Hamilton West, Ancaster, Dundas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the issue of overzealous litigants, that's something I personally identify with as a former municipal councillor, being the subject to several what I consider to be frivolous and vexatious complaints using the process as a political tool. But the Act is very clear that the Crown still has oversight of charges that would move forward. So through you, my question to the member is, why doesn't he have confidence in the professionalism of the courts and the Crowns to move forward appropriately when there are serious allegations of hate?
The member for York Centre.
I thank the member for that question, and I'm very happy to clarify. There is no question that our capable and professional Crowns are able to intervene in private prosecutions and stay or withdraw the charges. The problem is that at times, a Crown may take a non-position, but even if it would be appropriate to stay or withdraw, and the Crown did take the position and charges were stayed or were withdrawn, an informant would be able to appeal to a judicial review. And what that means is that the subject, the alleged accused, would be subjected to legal fees, to reputational risks, to travel restrictions. One of the common questions when you travel is, have you ever been subject to criminal proceedings or ever arrested? And so, regretfully, even if the Crown exercises its due diligence, there's still prospect of continuous prosecution, putting Canadians' well-being at risk.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask my friend, firstly, thank you for that excellent speech. To my colleague, I want to ask him, we've heard from the government, from several speakers from the government, that Jewish groups are absolutely supportive and in favor with the full content of Bill C-9. I would imagine, as a proud Jewish resident in your community, I'd like to find out from my colleague whether or not he has heard from any other Jewish groups that offer a different view.
Member for York Centre.
Thank you, Shadow Minister. Thank you, Shadow Minister, for that question. Since Friday, I have been in regular communications with various Jewish community groups, and essentially all of them have expressed one reservation or another about some of the contents of this bill that I have articulated earlier. The private prosecution concern is on top of mind. One of the leading organizations, in fact, is generally concerned with respect to the removal of the AG's consent. But I think at the end of the day, we would all agree that it is important that we stick to the letter of the law when it comes to the codification of the word hatred. And I don't understand, Speaker, why is it that this government is intent on diluting 35 years of good Supreme Court common law and urge them to go back and redraft that section?
Questions, comments? Question et commentaire. Member for Winnipeg North.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whether it is the shadow minister or the Conservative critic or the member that has just spoken, the concern that I have is in listening to what they have to say, I'm believing that they oppose the legislation, and I hope that doesn't mean that they're going to prevent it from ultimately going to committee. Does the member believe there's an opportunity that would see the Conservatives supporting the legislation, at least to go to committee, where the minister himself has indicated he's very much open to working with members to tune the legislation?
Member for York Centre, about 45 seconds.
Speaker, I have very serious concerns about the legislation in its current forms. We see a serious assault on free speech by virtue of dilution of the definition of hatred, by allowing private prosecutions for hate charges to proceed without Attorney General consent. And I'm very concerned about the coupling of essentially criminal statutes that do prescribe offenses that, if coupled with the allegation of hate, could result in criminal proceedings. This is a very problematic bill that the Liberals are bringing.